I'm on Capiz Island, 1941, deep in the Philippines. We weren't chasing ghosts. We were sent to set up radios, draw maps of muddy trails, and wait for the Japanese soldiers. But the jungle didn't care about our orders. The local people whispered one word like it meant death, Aswang. They said it could smile at you during the day like a friendly neighbor. Then at night, it would tear itself apart and fly through your roof. Wings black as a tarp, tongue long enough to stab through things. We laughed about it. We called it village stories, old fairy tales. Then one of our soldiers disappeared. His gun was left in the mud. His name tag hung from a vine where there were no footprints. And the night I saw those red eyes in the tree line, that's when we stopped laughing. Before we continue, please like and subscribe to support the channel, and comment below to tell us where you're watching from. Thanks. We arrived in Capiz late in 1941, before the war really exploded. The heat felt like a wet blanket. The air was thick with salt and rotting smells. Mangrove trees were everywhere with roots that looked like claws. The village people watched us from doorways. No smiles, just staring eyes. We were 12 soldiers, a small radio team with more mud than glory. I was the corporal carrying the old radio. Calloway was the sergeant, loud voice, always chewing tobacco. He thought he knew every trick the jungle could play. Harris was the young kid with freckles. He smiled at everything like the war was a fun summer job. Doc Milner smoked too much and joked that his lungs would outlive all of us. We had 2 Philippine scouts with us, Sergeant Domingo and young Reyes. They knew the jungle paths. They knew what not to step on. They talked less than the trees did. Our mission was simple on paper. String up a wire along the ridge. Stay in radio contact with headquarters. Mark a few goat paths in case we needed to escape if the Japanese attacked hard. We traveled light. Rifles, backpacks, a roll of antenna wire, a couple kerosene lamps, and enough salt pork to upset anyone's stomach. We made camp by a mangrove water inlet. The ground sucked at your boots if you stood still. A huge tree leaned over us, a belate tree they called it. The trunk twisted like the wood couldn't decide which way to grow. I hated that tree the moment I saw it. So did Domingo. He wouldn't walk under it after dark. He said a quick prayer that he tried to hide inside a cough. First night, he poured salt in a circle around the radio tent. Didn't say a word, just poured and patted it smooth like someone fixing cement. Calloway laughed loud and asked if we were trying to keep ghosts away. Domingo didn't answer. He just kept his eyes on the tree roots. I wrote down the weather. Air pressure dropping a little. Wind from the ocean. Strange bird call at 2 in the morning. I wrote that down. Strange bird call, like writing it made it normal. It didn't. You know how a place gets inside your head? The smell hits you first. Diesel fuel on canvas tents, fish drying somewhere. Sweet rot where the mangrove leaves sink into the water and cook. Then the sounds. Cicadas like a saw cutting wood, night birds, water sucking at tree roots, and underneath it all a hollow silence, like the jungle was holding its breath waiting to see if we'd notice. We didn't. Not that first day. We were busy being soldiers, pounding wire stakes, checking the radio, arguing about food, pretending we weren't already dreaming of home. We walked into the village on the second evening. A straight line of houses on stilts, bamboo floors with gaps so air could pass through and snakes couldn't climb up. A woman with smoke in her hair sat on a step and stared at my boots like they'd insulted her. The village leader, Captain Ernesto, met us halfway with a tight jaw and polite nods. They fed us rice and fish stew that tasted like the angry ocean. Kids stared at our rifles. A teenage girl named Sabelle kept her hands on her belly like she was protecting a small bird inside. Someone had burned coconut shells. The smoke stuck to my clothes. The village midwife came to us as the sun went down. They called her Lola Marta. She was small and stern, and no one interrupted her. She waved me into the dark corner of a hut and pointed at the window. There was a line of salt along the windowsill, neat and fresh. "You soldiers," she said, voice low, "do not laugh. Not in front of me." I told her I wouldn't. Truth was, my mouth felt dry. She held up a braid of garlic, old cloves that looked like yellow teeth. Over the door, always. Salt on every opening. Vinegar under the bed. Stingray tail by the doorway. She tapped a black whip hanging from a hook. The stingray whip. If it comes near, you strike. The sting hurts it like fire. Hurts what? Harris asked too loudly. She looked at him like a teacher looks at the slowest student. "Aswang," she said quietly. Everyone in the room looked at the floor. I said I didn't know that word. She made a face like that wasn't surprising. She explained it like a list, not a story. Woman by day. Smiles like you do. Hands that buy fish. At night it changes. Sometimes it leaves its legs behind and flies, only the top half with wings like a bat. Sometimes it crawls like a dog or a pig, but wrong. Thin, hungry. It has a tongue like a long black thread. It can slip through the gaps in your roof. It drinks, it eats. It likes the unborn babies, the weak, the lonely. She leaned closer. I could smell smoke on her breath and something bitter. You listen for the sound, she said. Tick, tick, tick. If it sounds loud, it's far away. If it sounds quiet, it's close. It's a trick. Don't be fooled. The captain spoke from the doorway. There are rules, he said. Salt, garlic, vinegar, ash, lines it won't cross, things it won't look at. He didn't say mirrors. He didn't need to. They told us stories like facts. A water buffalo by the river found drained dry like gray leather. Footprints in the mud that started as human feet and turned into pig hooves after 10 steps. A wake where a thin lady came to sit all night and refused a bowl of vinegar. Dogs hid under the bamboo floor and whimpered. In the morning, the dead body looked fine until they washed it. Then they found the liver was gone. A woman who borrowed Marta's lantern during a storm. Later, the baby in that house was born white and empty. When the woman named Lucia polished her brass tray that night, she couldn't see her own face in the reflection. Sable kept touching her belly. Her sister wouldn't come out of the house. 7 months pregnant, Marta said, and not sleeping. Someone had chopped an axe mark on their doorstep. Someone else had spit vinegar there and let it dry. Back at camp, we laughed because that's what men do when they don't want to feel scared. Jungle fairy tales. Old women keeping their daughters inside after dark. Calloway spit and called it all nonsense. Domingo didn't laugh. He spread ash across our doorway and tucked garlic into the roof beams. He gave each of us a look that said, humor me. I did. Harris made a joke of it and hung 2 garlic cloves from his helmet strap like a clown. Reyes told me later, quiet when the others were sleeping. It's not all the same thing. There are different names for each shape, but you only need to know one thing, it's patient. Patient for what? For you to forget the rules. I took the 2 to 4 a.m. watch because I don't sleep well the first week in a new place. The jungle noise had a way of crawling into your ears and laying eggs. The moon made a silver shine on the water. The radio was warm against my leg. The lamp made a little cone of yellow light where bugs flew in, burned, and dropped. At first there was the comfort of sound. Frogs like leaky pipes. Insects sawing. A nightjar making that weird popping sound every few breaths. Far-off waves crashing on the sandbar. I could time my heartbeat by it. Then the jungle shut its mouth. You know that kind of quiet, not peaceful. Not peaceful at all. An absence. Like the waiting room before a doctor calls your name. Every hair on my arm stood up. The smell changed. Rot and fruit and something metallic like an old tin cup left full of rainwater. My tongue tasted like pennies. I licked my lips and got salt and something else. I looked up and saw the roof slats. A drop of liquid hit my cheek. Warm. I wiped it with the back of my hand and told myself a gecko had bad manners. A faint clicking sound like a metronome under a blanket. Far away, I thought. The sound said far, but my bones said close. I stood up slowly. The lamp flame bent sideways, then straightened, like someone had breathed on it. The air didn't move. Sweat ran down my ribs and made me itch under my shirt. Something moved across the path beyond the antenna line. Pig, I told myself, but the legs were wrong. Too long, like a kid wearing his dad's pants. It didn't trot. It shuffled like it was remembering how to walk. The head turned and turned too far. I blinked and it was gone behind the bolete tree. I tried to laugh. It came out like a cough. I told myself to stop being an idiot. I told myself to check the wire and pretend I was busy. The tick-tick sound got quieter. Farther away, said the trick. My body said the opposite. Feathers beat past my ear and I flinched so hard my knee hit the lamp table. The glass rang. Fruit bat, I told myself. Big fruit bat. They eat guava and scare the heck out of Americans. I forced a breath in and let it out slow. I almost felt brave. Harris came to take over my watch shift. The kid still had garlic on his helmet strap. He looked like a boy trying to impress a girl at a Halloween party. Your turn, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He squinted up at the roof. Corporal, he whispered. Don't laugh. I think there's someone up there. We both stared. We saw nothing but darkness and the thin lines of the roof beams. We heard nothing but our own breathing. We didn't wake the others. We should have. Harris was walking guard duty at 3:47, I know because I wrote it down. Harris had a good slow walk. He looked back too often, but that's better than not enough. At 4:09, I whistled our soft two-note signal and got nothing back. That happens sometimes. Men stopped to pee. Men got distracted lighting cigarettes. I waited 1 minute, then another. Then the minutes felt like miles. At 4:16, we went to find him. We did a line search like the Army teaches, 5 steps between each man, lanterns low. Domingo and Reyes read the ground like artists. The mud told the story. It said Harris walked. It said he stopped. It said his heels dug in like he'd leaned backward hard, like something grabbed him by the collar. Then the footprints changed. Human heels melted into something split down the middle, with a gap like a hoof. Not perfect pig prints, not perfect anything. The footprint line went toward the belate tree roots and then just quit, like a pen running out of ink. We found his rifle in the muck. No magazine loaded. Sling torn clean off. A piece of his gear strap hung 8 feet up on a bamboo branch, threaded there like someone on a ladder had placed it. I hate that detail even now. It makes me feel small. There was a smell, not dead yet. Sweet, like fish sauce on a hot day, and foul underneath that. Milner gagged, then cursed like cursing could clean the air. We made the search wider. Tin cups on strings clinked on the far side of camp even though there was no wind. The antenna wire hummed even though the radio was off. The jungle stayed quiet. That was the worst part, maybe. The silence felt like it was listening. At sunrise, the villagers came in a group. The captain made an ash cross mark in our doorway. Women pounded garlic in bowls like hammering nails. The midwife walked the edges of our camp, sprinkling vinegar until the air stung. Someone invited it, she said, not looking at me. Invited what? Calloway snapped, tired and angry and scared all at once. Something that wears a face and smiles at you during the day, she said. It looked at your salt. It saw where the line was weak. At night it came through that spot. I wanted to tell her to stop. She wasn't wrong, and that made it worse. Reyes found a clump of hair near the belate tree. Not pig hair. Not human hair. Coarse and wrong. He wrapped it in a bit of oiled paper and gave it to me, like it was my job to know what to do with it. I put it in a pouch and didn't touch it with my skin. Someone said a pregnant girl 2 villages over was found at dawn. She was alive. Her belly was not. People spoke softly and did not look toward Sabel's house. We sat on ammunition boxes and didn't talk. I wrote personnel missing Private J. Harris on my notepad. My hand tried to write Aswang and I made it stop. I wrote hostile activity possible and felt like I'd lied to the air. That night we set a trap. If it was men, men would bleed. If it was an animal, animals could die. If it was something else, we would at least see what shape it had and name it, and maybe that would make it smaller. We hung lanterns low, tied tripwires with string and tin cups, poured salt circles around the tents and the radio. Domingo looked at our rifles like they were toys and handed each of us a stingray tail whip. For when bullets don't work, he said. He didn't smile when he said it. He didn't smile much at all. The jungle watched us get ready. That's how it felt. You think you'll know when it starts, a shout, a gunshot, men grabbing rifles and tripping over each other. It didn't start like that. It started with the tin cups clanking while the leaves stayed still. It started with the radio wire humming a thin note like glass about to crack. It started with the lamp flame pinching to a blue point and stretching tall, like someone had leaned in and breathed deep. I saw eyes first. 2 red coals low in the brush. Too far apart for a man. Too steady for an animal. They blinked sideways like a fish. When the lantern light swung toward them, the eyes didn't shine brighter or dim. They just watched. I told my finger not to pull the trigger. My finger didn't listen. Branches above us creaked. Something heavy and bent moved along the roof beam. The roof sagged with weight. The line shifted, paused. Then a shadow leaned over and something like an elbow stuck out. Wrong angles, wrong joints. The tongue was what scared me most. Thin, dark. It threaded between the bamboo roof slats and tasted the air above Milner's gear. I could hear it make a small wet sound each time it touched wood. Tap tap like a fingernail on a table. The ticking sound was close, but the tick-tick-tick was faint out by the river, and my mind split in two, and both halves wanted to run. Reyes cracked the stingray whip into the rafters. A fast whip snap that bit the air. The thing answered with a shriek from above us, not outside. Dry and sharp, like a bat that learned how to scream like a woman. The tongue flicked back. The roof shifted like something took its weight off. And then the grass roof gave way. A little waterfall of sticks and dust and a smell like rotten meat. I threw salt high. Useless, like throwing a handful of snow at a house fire. We fired our guns too. Not crazy. Not at first. A pair of shots, then another. Controlled. The bushes thrashed by the trail. A shape came out that didn't fit inside my head. For a second it looked like a woman cut off at the waist. Ribs like the slats of a broken barrel. Wings folding with a sound like wet canvas. Then it was a shadow that wasn't a shadow. Then it was gone, my ears rang. The jungle found its voice, then swallowed it again. Something hit Ortega. Not claws. Not teeth. More like a hook made of pure hate. He went down hard and lost his breath. Calloway dragged him by the collar and fell on his face when the grass roof collapsed behind them. Something brushed my shoulder as it passed, and I felt cold instead of hot. That's wrong, isn't it? You get hit in a fight, you feel heat. I felt like my bone froze from the outside in. I swung the back end of my rifle and hit nothing but air and a smell I never want to smell again. We pushed it away with chaos, salt thrown by the handful. A whip that cut something we couldn't see and made a sound like oil spitting on a hot pan. The thing shrieked again, farther this time, or closer. I can't tell you because the sound lies. A pig stood on the path and watched with dead eyes. It didn't blink once in a full minute. When it turned its head, its neck bent the wrong way, backward, past where you expect the joint to be. Then it was gone, like someone had erased it with an angry hand. The tin cups went quiet. The wire stopped singing. The roof dropped another bit of straw and settled. We counted. We always count after a fight. 2 hurt. Ortega with a nasty gash in shock. Reyes with a cut that looked like it had been made by 3 long points. Milner slapped bandages on with hands that shook and told us to shut up while he worked. We shut up. Roosters would have crowed if there had been roosters alive. There weren't. 3 chickens in the coop were just white meat on wood, peeled clean. No blood in the dirt. I stared at that a long time without blinking. At dawn, we walked around the camp edge. In the dust by the radio tent was a trail, like someone had dragged a rope dipped in dark oil. It wandered to the belate tree and stopped there. The marks on the bamboo weren't from claws like you think of claws. They were from something that pressed and pulled. A smear on a leaf looked like blood but didn't beat up like blood does. We put it in the evidence bag because soldiers put things in bags when they don't know what else to do. The villagers came again. They didn't say, "We told you so." They reset the lines of ash and salt. They tucked more garlic into our roof beams and spit vinegar in an X on the door. Marta told us no one sleeps flat on their backs. Protect the belly. We didn't argue, and like to think they're above rules. We were not above these, Sable cried without making sound. Domingo wouldn't meet my eyes when I asked what he thought. He kept looking at the tree. He said, "We should leave." Like it was a weather report and not an order. By then everyone had stopped laughing. Even Calloway, the captain, told us the wind would change. He meant more than wind. We burned what we couldn't carry by mid-morning. That's wrong in a place that grows its walls from grass and hope. But we did it. We buried the trash that wouldn't burn. We broke the antenna, coiled the wire, and left the poles to rot. We filled our pockets with bullets and salt because both felt like a plan. We started walking toward the coast in a long line. The trail was skinny as a vein. You could hear water but not see it, and what you could see was worse. I walked third in line. I kept seeing the missing second set of footprints behind Harris's last steps. I kept not seeing them until I almost tripped on my own feet. Halfway down the ridge, a rattan vine hung across our path like a clothesline. At the end of it, swinging like a clock pendulum, were dog tags. Harris's dog tags, no prints in the mud below. No sign of a climb. Just metal with our unit name stamped on it, clicking in the breeze. We didn't take them down. I'm not proud of that. I'm not ashamed either. We weren't going to stand under that vine any longer than it took to say his name. We reached the beach by sunset. We built a little fire out of wet wood that smoked and refused to flame. We ate hard bread that made our teeth hurt. We didn't talk about the chickens or the marks or the tongue. I wrote the incident report by lamplight, with the notepad on my knee. Hostile species unknown. Night activity. Missing. Private J. Harris presumed captured or lost. Evidence animal attack. Consistent with large bat. Recommend staying away from bolete trees. Keep lights on. Salt use. I crossed the salt use line out. It looked wrong on a U.S. Army form. Rain came in short bursts. The kind that makes you put a hat on, then rips it off with a laugh. We passed a bottle around and watched the darkness move. Sometimes it looked like it moved on its own. Sometimes I think it did. Sometimes I think I'm lying to myself now the same way I lied on that paper. Then 2 mornings later, a runner brought news. Bombs up north. Landings on Luzon Island. The world had finally caught fire. Orders came to move. New codes. New report forms for the logs. Men were counting trucks and trying not to count their odds. We turned our little camp over to a lieutenant with fresh shine on his rank bars. A new officer so new he still believed forms could stop bullets. He looked at my evidence bag and asked what it was. I told him I didn't know. He wrote dispose in pencil on the tag and set it aside like yesterday's leftover food. I watched him do it and didn't say a word, because I was tired of my own voice. We went back through the village to say what passes for goodbye when you leave people to face their own monsters. Sable's door had more salt than wood. Garlic hung like metals. The midwife put a stingray tail whip in my hand and told me to keep it. I tried to hand it back and she closed my fingers over it until the bones pressed together. For when your bullets don't work, she said. And then she was gone into the smoke and her shape became part of the house. Domingo left his own whip behind, hooked over their door. He finally met my eyes. You won't write this, he said with a shrug that could mean anything. I said, no. We started up the trail again with backpacks that felt heavier than they should. Clouds stacked over the ocean. The bolete tree stood back at camp like a black thumb in my memory. If I turned just right, I could put it behind a palm tree trunk and make it disappear. That trick worked if I didn't breathe. The road south was full of rumors. Landings, retreats, names of towns that would be ghost towns by Christmas. We folded into a bigger unit and lost our small shape. That happens in war. The edges blur. In Iloilo, a captain took my incident report and filed it under things that didn't matter anymore. I watched him stamp it and had the stupid thought that ink outlasts men. Maybe that's why we write. Maybe that's why I'm talking now. Calloway asked me if I wanted a smoke. I said no, then took one anyway. Milner told a joke about a priest and a fisherman and got the timing wrong. Rhea sat on a crate and sharpened a knife that had no edge left to sharpen. Domingo stared at the sky like it might tell him a different story if he kept asking. I signed the ledger where it said, Missing in Action, Private J. Harris. I wrote my initials neatly. The rain smudged the bottom line before it dried. That's a small thing. It stayed with me more than the blood smell. There's a way people like me end stories around campfires. You say you still hear a sound at night. You say something found you again in a different country. You say you wake up and your feet are muddy. I won't feed you that. I won't pretend this is neat and tidy. What happened next was simple. We followed orders. We moved south. We lost men to bullets and fever and the kind of bad luck that comes on trucks with bald tires. We sent and received radio messages. We ate rice and salt fish and missed home until it hurt. Sometimes in a place with no trees and no shadows. I remembered the touch on my shoulder and felt cold in my bones and had to move to a different chair. Years later, a museum man asked if I had any objects from the islands. I told him I'd lost everything. That wasn't true. I still had the stingray tail whip, brittle and black and cracked at the handle. It lives in a drawer now. Not a shrine. Just a place. Sometimes I take it out to oil the leather and keep it from turning to dust in my hands. That's not magic. That's just taking care of things. If you want a lesson, I don't have one. If you want a monster, you can pick from several. Maybe it was a bat that learned people like stories and hid inside one. Maybe it was a story that learned how to wear a bat's shape. Maybe it was hunger with a face. We left Capiz under gray sky with orders we didn't get to argue about. The rain pressed down the dust and made everything smell clean for a minute. The belate tree, if I think about it, isn't a tree anymore. It's a place where the trail stops and something that isn't me waits to see if I'll forget the rules. I won't. But that's only worth something if rules matter. On the morning we moved out, a clerk slid me a paper and a pen. I wrote what they told me to write. Unit, date, location. One line for Harris. The ink bled a little where the page had gotten damp. The clerk didn't look at me when he took it. He had 50 more names to file and a truck to catch. That's how it ended for us in Capiz, not with a bang. Not with a campfire twist. With a wet signature in a book, a dull stamp on the corner, and the sound of trucks grinding gears as they pulled away from a place that keeps its own time. So that's the end of our video. If you made it this far, make sure to hit like and subscribe. It really helps the channel and it's free. And if you want more scary stories like this one, check out the other videos on screen right now. Thanks for watching and stay safe out there. See you soon.